I can see the point of view, the perspective of women who might argue, what about the men who have abused power and position? I don't want to submit because there are men that exist who have abused their position and power over women and other men. I'm not here to argue that. I'm definitely agreeing that there are some men and some women who abuse position and power. I can be empathetic to those who have been in positions of feeling helpless because you're under someone's authority and you can't really change much. I know what that feels like. I was in the Air Force. I know what it feels like to not have options or to feel like you don't have options. There are some men and some women who abuse position and power. That doesn't change the rule. Doesn't change the rule. That just makes them a breaker of the rule. Because criminals exist doesn't make the law wrong or non-existent. It just makes them criminals. So we don't use the exceptions to create new rules. That's irrational. So it's not as if it's just women submit to men. It's we all submit to someone. The president submits to Congress, the Supreme Court, the Senate, and all vice versa. It all intertwines. Everyone's going to submit to someone. Crowds submit to the FBI. Yeah. Humans submit to gravity. Personification, but still a thing. We all submit to someone. So yeah, we must not demonize the word submission just because we don't like what we think it means. It just means you might be ignorant. Submissiveness is cooperation in light of the hierarchy. We are all in a given hierarchy, all of us. In the military, they call it the chain of command. It just tells you who your boss is and who their 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 boss is. That's the chain of command. You're going to submit to someone who has to submit to someone who's going to submit to someone. You see this in sports where men and women, again, it's humans, but especially to highlight it because, again, a lot of the examples of submission is always women submit to the man. And I'm like, well, no, it's humans submit to humans. Humans submit to humans. Of course, in a relational dynamic, in a given monogamous, traditional relationship dynamic, the woman might be submitting to the man in that given scenario. But now we're seeing everyone recreate the wheel. Cool. Do you. But again, we're not talking about women submitting to men. We're talking about the word submission. The word submission. And of course, we're applying context as we go. In sports, Kyrie and KD, dynamic duo. And they argue back and forth. And it's not verbally, it's not visually. But you kind of see, you don't know who's the finisher on this team. And therefore, towards the end of the games, you can see how an 8-point lead with 2 minutes to go can turn into an 8-point deficit at the end of the game. Because no one understood their role completely. And of course, that's the job of the coach, to establish hierarchy and say, all right, you're the leading scorer, quarters 1 through 3. But in that fourth quarter, give the ball to Kevin Durant. Give the ball to Kyrie. That's the job of a coach, to establish order. The purpose of training is for when you have to react. Is when there's no time to think, there's no time to communicate. The purpose of training is for purely reacting without thinking, which means you're going to respond with everything you trained on repeatedly. That's why Navy SEALs, they practice, they train with live ammo, because they're saying we're going to play the same way we practice. And yeah, you need to take this seriously. Practice is going to be treated seriously. So when we go out there and play, no one's trying to take over the leading role when you've been the backup role. You've been a follower in training, and now you got out here in the real world where people are about to die or could die, and now you're trying to be a leader out of nowhere. We did not train like that. Go back to your role. Protection. If somebody has to protect someone else, and that other person who's being protected can't protect themselves, who's most valuable in that given moment? The protector. If the protector dies, everyone dies. If the United States of America did away with our Coast Guard and Navy, that would leave our oceans wide open. And not that we couldn't protect ourselves with aircraft, because we could, but we would be vulnerable if we lost our protector of the seas. are governors of our borders. In any given dynamic, the person who is responsible for you being alive is probably more valuable than you. Probably more valuable than you. Vulnerability. You cannot be submissive without acknowledging the requirement of vulnerability. Now, this might be defined differently in a workplace versus in a relationship. The way I define it, and of course this applies mostly to relationships, is giving someone the ability to hurt you and trusting them not to. Giving someone the ability to hurt you, the opportunity to hurt you, the knowledge to hurt you, the information to hurt you, but trusting them not to. That means you're telling them secrets. You're telling them your insecurities, your weaknesses, your strengths, your fears. You're giving that to a single person, giving somebody that ability to hurt you, but you're trusting them not to. That's a daily and hourly task. And that's how trust is built between, especially in a relationship dynamic, where this person knows everything about you, and yet you guys still trust each other because you know at any moment they could turn on me, but they haven't turned on me. Why not? Why haven't they turned on me yet? What submissiveness isn't? Silence. And again, you hear people all over the place. The loudest voices get heard. It's unfortunate. Submissiveness is not being continuously silent. It's being meek. It's being strong, under control, being knowledgeable, under control, having the right answer, but being in control of your timing, understanding a given dynamic, understanding the environment, understanding the person you're giving that information to, understanding the value of delivery, of quality delivery, tone, understanding if I say it this way, they won't listen. If I say it while he's eating, he won't hear it. If I say it while the game is on, he's not paying attention. If I say it while I'm naked, he's still not paying attention. It's how the world works. There's a time and place for everything. And most people are just so impatient that they can't wait for a moment to where, all right, this is the right moment. What matters most? What matters now? What matters more? Priorities. Prioritizing. If you understand someone well enough, you can understand when the opportune time to tell them something is, which means you have to be patient. You have to hold the right answer and say, this is not the right time to tell them, based off my knowledge of them. Not everyone's capable of that. Submissiveness is not oppression. You're not being oppressed. You have a choice. You have a choice. Women have some of the most choices today than any woman before them. You have the ability to choose. If you don't like the relationship you're in, you can leave. You can get a divorce. You can call the police. You can get him put out the house. You can get a restraining order. If you don't like the way he leads, if you don't like the way your boss leads, you can quit, unless you're in the military. And even then you have options because there's checks and balances. You can go to the IG, equal opportunity. You can talk to their leadership. You can send an email to their leadership. You can send an instant message on Instagram to one of the top officials in the military. You have options. You have options. So you're not oppressed by being submissive. I'm not being oppressed by staying in these people's house. I'm not oppressed by that. It's not the same. Submissiveness is not slavery. Again, you have choice. You don't die if you're not submissive. You shouldn't die if you're not submissive. There's consequences, but it's not slavery. And this is probably the biggest one. You're not weak because you're submissive. If anything, you're meek because you're submissive. You're meek. Right now, I'm the strongest person in this house. There's a huge ass dog in here too, so he might be the strongest. He ain't the smartest, but yeah, I'm bigger than both the people that I live with right now. I'm stronger than both the people I live with right now. But I understand I'm going to choose every single day and every single moment to submit to them. It's their rules. I follow their rules. They say don't leave clothes in the dryer. It's their rules, bruh. They open the window. It's their rules. It doesn't make me weak. It makes me wise to understand if I want to adapt, if I want to stay in this environment, I have to adapt and assimilate. I can fight them. I can give feedback, but ultimately, if you, if you want your own rules, you want to live the way you want to live, get your own place. Get your own place. Stay single. People into relationships and they want to do what they want to do when they want to do it, and that's fine if you have leverage. But if you don't, you got a choice to make. You got a choice to make. You're not weak because you're submissive. You're wise. The Trojan horse was wisdom in action. Amazing. Whoever came up with that idea, genius. Because a lot of people might see it as surrender, and it was temporary. It was temporary. It was misdirection. It was meekness. You can win most battles with being meek, with being submissive. The constant comparison of men and women, like sometimes strength can't get the job done. Sometimes you need seduction. Some of the best spies in the world, both historically and today, are women. Because again, how do you bring the strongest man in the world to his knees? A beautiful woman. One of my greatest weaknesses is a beautiful woman who smiles. Jesus. It's like the hardest thing to find. I'm like, bro, all y'all scowl, bro? All y'all eyebrows pointed straight down like Eric Cartman? It's crazy. You're not weak because you're submissive. You're wise.